I'll never forget the exact moment I saw it with my own eyes. The moment I could no longer pretend it wasn't happening. The moment that changed everything. My two boys, Jalen and Theo, were standing in the corner of my parents' dining room. 8-year-old Jalen had his arm around his little brother's shoulders. Both of them were holding empty plates. Not half empty, not waiting to be served empty, just empty. Plain white ceramic plates that reflected the overhead light in a way that made my chest hurt. Across the room, at the big oak table my father was so proud of, sat my sister Vanessa's kids. Lily and Caleb, their plates were piled high. Chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls with butter melting into golden pools. They were laughing, talking over each other, reaching for seconds before they'd even finished their firsts, and my mother, Ellen, was standing right there between these two worlds, between the table of plenty and the corner of nothing. She was smiling at Lily, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face with such tenderness it made something crack inside my chest. I had just walked in from the kitchen. I'd been helping my father, Harold, carry in extra chairs from the garage. Always helping, always useful, always there, Mom. Jalen's voice was so small, so careful, like he was apologizing for existing. Can we eat now? My mother turned to him with that expression I'd seen 1,000 times but never truly recognized until that moment. It wasn't cruelty exactly. It was something worse. It was indifference wrapped in a thin smile. Just wait a little bit longer, sweetheart, she said, but her voice held no warmth. Let Lily and Caleb finish first. Then you can have what's left. What's left? Those two words hung in the air like poison. Theo, my younger boy, looked up at his brother with confusion in his eyes. He was too young to fully understand, but old enough to feel it. The difference, the hierarchy, the message that his hunger mattered less. I opened my mouth to say something, but Vanessa spoke first. They're growing kids, Selena, she said, not even looking at me. She was cutting Caleb's chicken into smaller pieces, even though he was perfectly capable of doing it himself. They need to eat properly. Your boys can wait a few more minutes. It won't kill them. It won't kill them. I stood there frozen, watching my sister's children eat like royalty while my son stood in the corner like servants waiting for scraps. And I realized with a clarity that felt like ice water in my veins that this wasn't new. This wasn't a what-I'm oversight. This was the way it had always been. I just hadn't let myself see it before. The drive home that night was silent. Darius, my husband, kept glancing at me from the driver's seat. The boys had fallen asleep in the back, exhausted from a day of being invisible. You okay? He finally asked. I wasn't okay. I was the opposite of okay, but I didn't know how to put it into words yet. How do you explain that you've just realized your entire family sees your children as less than? How do you admit that you've been funding your own son's humiliation for years? Because that's exactly what I'd been doing. It started small. The way these things always do. 7 years ago, right after Jalen was born, my mother called me crying. They were behind on the mortgage. Just 1 month, just this once. My father's hours had been cut. Could I help? I sent the money. $1,500. It hurt our budget, but Darius and I made it work. We always made it work. That 1 month became 2 months, then 3. Then it wasn't even a question anymore. I was just paying part of their mortgage every month. It became a line item in our budget. Mom and Dad's house. $800. My mother had a way of asking that made it impossible to say no. She'd call and her voice would be so small, so fragile. She'd talk about how hard things were, how they'd sacrificed so much for me and Vanessa growing up, how they'd given us everything. Guilt is a powerful currency, and my mother spent it liberally. Then came the car situation. Vanessa needed a new minivan. Her old one had finally died, and she had 2 kids to transport. She couldn't afford the payments on her own. Could I co-sign? Just a formality. She had a job. She'd make the payments. I'd never have to worry about it. I co-signed. 3 months later, I was making those payments too. Vanessa had dozens of reasons why she couldn't pay. Medical bills, unexpected expenses. The kids needed new shoes, new coats, school supplies, birthday parties. Always something. Always urgent. Always more important than the promises she'd made. My father took a different approach than my mother. Where she used tears and guilt, he used logic and practicality. He'd sit me down with spreadsheets and calculators, showing me how much they needed. Breaking it down into manageable pieces. It's just temporary, he'd say, his reading glasses perched on his nose, his finger tapping numbers on paper. Just until we get back on our feet. You're doing so well, Selena. Your job is stable. You and Darius don't have to worry about money the way we do. Family helps family. Family helps family. I heard that phrase so many times it became like a heartbeat, constant, unquestioned, essential. but I started to notice things. Small things that Darius would point out in his gentle way. Your mom's car is new, he said one evening after we'd dropped off another emergency check. It's a lease. I replied automatically, defensive. It's cheaper than buying. It's a luxury model, Selena, and we're driving a 12-year-old sedan. I didn't want to hear it. I pushed it away. Family helps family. When Vanessa posted photos from her beach vacation, I felt a twist in my stomach. We hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. Every time we started to save, there was another emergency, another need, another crisis that required our money. Looking great, I commented on the photo, trying to feel happy for her. Doesn't Vanessa work part-time? Darius asked, looking over my shoulder at the images of resort pools and ocean views. She has expenses, I said. The kids have activities, dance lessons, soccer. It adds up. So do dance lessons and soccer for our kids, Darius said quietly. But Jalen told me yesterday he didn't want to ask about baseball camp because he knew it was expensive. That hurt. My 8-year-old was already learning to make himself smaller, to need less, to take up less space. But I still didn't connect the dots. Not fully. The family gatherings were always at my parents' house, always, every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner. And there was always a pattern I'd normalized so completely I didn't even see it anymore. Vanessa's kids were the center of everything. When we'd arrive, my mother would rush to the door to greet Lily and Caleb, scooping them up in hugs, exclaiming over how big they'd gotten, how beautiful they were, how smart and talented and special. Jalen and Theo would walk in behind them and get a distracted pat on the head. Go wash your hands, my mother would tell them. Already turning back to Vanessa's children. Dinner will be ready soon. At the table, Lily and Caleb sat in the best seats, close to my parents, close to the serving dishes. They were asked about their day, their school, their friends. Everyone leaned in to listen to their stories, laughing at their jokes, praising their accomplishments. My boys sat at the end of the table. When they tried to share something from their day, they were talked over, interrupted, or met with brief, polite nods before the conversation shifted back to the golden grandchildren. Darius saw it all. He'd reach under the table and squeeze my hand when Jalen's face fell after being ignored mid-sentence. He'd catch my eye when Theo stopped trying to join conversations altogether. They're just excited about the younger grandkids, I'd tell him on the drive home. Making excuses I'd crafted into an art form. It's not personal, but it was personal. It was deeply, painfully personal. The gift giving was where it became impossible to ignore. For Christmas, Lily and Caleb received piles of presents. New bikes, gaming systems, expensive toys that stayed at my parents' house, so they'd have things to play with when they visited. Jalen and Theo each got a book and a $20 bill. We can't afford to spend equally on everyone, my mother explained when she saw my face. We're on a fixed income. You understand, a fixed income that I supplemented with thousands of dollars a year, a fixed income that somehow stretched to cover beach vacations and new appliances and restaurant dinners, but couldn't manage equal Christmas gifts for all for grandchildren. Vanessa never acknowledged any of it. She'd arrive at family gatherings empty-handed while Darius and I brought wine and dessert and side dishes. She'd complain about money while wearing new clothes. She'd talk about how hard it was to make ends meet while planning another weekend getaway. And my parents would nod sympathetically, agreeing that life was so expensive, things were so hard. Wasn't it terrible how much everything costs these days? Then they'd turn to me with that expectant look, that assumption, that unspoken demand. And I'd write another check. I'd convinced myself I was being generous, that I was being a good daughter, that I was holding the family together. But that night in the dining room, watching my children stand in the corner with empty plates while being told to wait for crumbs, I finally understood the truth. I wasn't holding the family together. I was funding a hierarchy that placed my children at the bottom. I was paying for my own sons to be treated as less than. I was bankrolling their humiliation. The realization hit me in waves over the next few days. I'd be making breakfast and suddenly remember how Jalen always offered to share his snacks with Lily and Caleb. But they never shared with him. I'd be folding laundry and recall how my mother had canceled plans to see my boys' school play but never missed one of Vanessa's kids' events. Every memory reframed itself. Every interaction revealed its true nature. The pattern was everywhere once I started looking for it. Darius didn't say I told you so. He never did. He just held me while I cried angry, bitter tears in our bedroom after the boys were asleep. What do I do? I asked him, what do you want to do? He replied, I wanted to protect my children. I wanted them to know their worth. I wanted them to grow up understanding that they deserved to be seen, heard, valued. that they weren't second-class citizens waiting for crumbs. But I also felt trapped by years of conditioning. Family helps family. Don't be selfish. Don't abandon your parents. Don't turn your back on your sister. The guilt was crushing. Then Jalen came to me 3 days later while I was working at my laptop. "Mom?" he said, hovering in the doorway. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby. Come here." I pulled him onto my lap even though he was really getting too big for it. "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa like us as much as they like Lily and Caleb?" The question broke something fundamental inside me. Because he knew. My 8-year-old child knew he was loved less, knew he was valued less, knew he was treated as less, and I had allowed it to happen. I had paid for it to happen. "They do love you," I started to say, but the lie wouldn't form. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't gaslight my own child into doubting what he'd experienced with his own eyes and heart. "It's complicated," I said instead, which was also inadequate. But at least it was honest. "But I promise you this, it's not about you. You're wonderful and worthy and deserving of all the love in the world. Do you hear me?" He nodded against my chest, but I could feel his doubt. It radiated from him like heat. That night, after the boys were in bed, I sat down with Darius at our kitchen table. "I need to stop," I said. "All of it. The mortgage payments, the car payments, the emergency money, everything." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Okay, they're going to be furious. Probably my mother will cry. My father will give me his disappointed lecture. Vanessa will tell everyone I'm selfish and cruel. Probably," he said again, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "But you're not doing this to hurt them. You're doing this to protect our sons. Not just my sons, our sons." He'd been protecting them all along in the ways he could, trying to shield them from the worst of it, building them up at home to counter what they experienced with my family. Now, it was my turn. I started with a spreadsheet. I wanted to see the numbers clearly. No more vague sense of helping out here and there. I needed hard data. The mortgage payments, $9,600 a year, the car payments, $4,800 a year, emergency funds over the past year, $6,300, various other requests, gifts, covered expenses, roughly $3,000 a year. $23,700. I stared at that number until my vision blurred. Nearly $24,000 a year I'd been giving to people who couldn't be bothered to put food on plates for my children before their sisters' children ate. The first call I made was to my bank. I canceled the automatic transfers to my parents' mortgage account. The woman on the phone processed it efficiently, without judgment, with no idea she was helping me burn down the world as I'd known it. Next, I called the auto loan company. As a co-signer, I couldn't remove myself from the loan, but I could stop making the payments I'd been covering. I explained that the primary borrower would need to resume responsibility for the account. Then came the hard part. I called my mother. "Selena, I was just thinking about you. Listen, your father needs some dental work done and our insurance won't cover all of it. We're looking at about $1,800 out of pocket. Could you?" "No," I said. The word felt foreign in my mouth. How many times had I said no to my mother in my entire adult life? Maybe twice, maybe never. "I'm sorry, what?" "No, I can't help with the dental work. And I need to tell you that I've canceled the automatic transfers for the mortgage. I won't be contributing to that anymore." Silence. Long, cold silence. "Selena, what are you talking about? You can't just stop. We depend on that money, I know you do. But I can't continue anymore, can't, or won't." Her voice had shifted from shock to sharp. "What's gotten into you?" "I've been thinking a lot about priorities," I said, working to keep my voice steady. "About where my money should go. And I've decided it needs to stay with my immediate family. We are your family." The tears started then, right on cue. "How can you do this to us? After everything we've done for you. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. We gave you everything. You gave me a lot," I acknowledged. "But you're also asking me to give you nearly $24,000 a year while my sons stand in the corner waiting for crumbs. What are you talking about?" "What crumbs?" "Last Sunday at dinner, Jalen and Theo stood there with empty plates while Lily and Caleb ate first. You told my children to wait for what was left. Do you remember that?" A pause. "They were fine. They got plenty to eat after Vanessa's kids were done. After they'd taken what they wanted. My children were an afterthought." "You're being overly sensitive. You always were too emotional about things." There it was. The dismissal, the minimization, the subtle suggestion that my perception of reality was flawed, that my feelings were invalid. "Maybe I am emotional," I said. "I'm emotional about my children being treated as less than. I'm emotional about funding a family dynamic that hurts them. So I'm stopping. Effective immediately. Your father is going to hear about this. I'm sure he will." I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down on the counter. But underneath the fear and guilt, there was something else. Something that felt almost like freedom. My father called 20 minutes later. "Your mother is very upset," he said, his voice cold with disapproval. "I'd like to understand what's going on here, Selena. I'm sure Mom explained it. She said you're refusing to help us anymore, that you're cutting us off financially. That's not the daughter I raised. The daughter you raised sends you nearly $24,000 a year while working full-time and raising two children. The daughter you raised puts your needs before her own family's needs. The daughter you raised accepts being treated like an ATM because she's too guilty to say no. We're not treating you like an ATM. We're family. This is what family does. Is it what family does, Dad? Because I don't see Vanessa contributing. I don't see her paying your mortgage or her own car payment. That's all me, just me. And I'm done. So you're going to let us lose our house? Is that what you're saying?" The manipulation was so clear now. How had I not seen it before? The immediate jump to the worst-case scenario, the implication that their problems were my responsibility, the complete absence of accountability for their own choices. "You're not going to lose your house," I said. "You're going to have to make different choices. Budget differently, maybe downsize. The things most people do when they can't afford their current lifestyle. We're 70 years old, Selena. We can't just start over. And I'm 36 with two children who deserve better than being treated like second-class grandchildren in their own family. My priority has to be them. This is about Sunday dinner, about some perceived slight. You're willing to destroy this family over nothing? It's not nothing to my sons. And it's not just Sunday. It's every Sunday, every holiday, every interaction where they're made to feel less important, less loved, less valuable than their cousins. I won't fund that anymore. You're making a terrible mistake," my father said, his voice heavy with finality. "You're going to regret this, maybe," I said. "But I'll regret it less than I'd regret continuing to pay for my children's humiliation." I hung up. Then I called Vanessa. "I guess you heard," I said when she answered. "I heard you've lost your mind. Do you know what you're doing to Mom and Dad?" "I know what I'm doing for my own kids." "Your kids are fine, Selena. You're being dramatic. My kids stood in the corner with empty plates while yours ate first. You were there. You saw it. And you said nothing. It wasn't that big a deal. You're blowing it out of proportion. And the car I'm co-signed on? I'm not making those payments anymore either. You'll need to handle that yourself." Her voice turned icy. "You can't do that. It'll ruin my credit." "No, you're not making the payments you agreed to make will ruin your credit. I'm just no longer covering for you. You're being incredibly selfish, am I? I've given you and Mom and Dad nearly $24,000 a year. How much have you contributed to the family, Vanessa? How much have you given? I have kids to take care of. So do I, and from now on, that's where my money is going." She hung up on me. I expected that. What I didn't expect was how light I felt. How clear, how absolutely certain that I was doing the right thing despite the guilt trying to claw its way back into my chest. The following weeks were hard. My mother called daily, alternating between tears and anger. My father sent long emails detailing their financial situation, listing all the ways they'd struggle without my help. Vanessa posted vague, but pointed social media updates about family betrayal and selfishness. I blocked most of it out. Darius ran interference when he could. And slowly, gradually, things began to shift. My parents put their house on the market. They found a smaller place, a condo that was more affordable, easier to maintain, actually appropriate for their needs. They were angry about it, furious that they'd been forced to downsize. But they did it. Vanessa had to take on extra hours at work. She complained about it constantly, but she made her car payments. She cut back on the activities and expenses and extras she'd taken for granted. She had to actually budget. And in my own home, something beautiful happened. Without the constant drain on our finances, we had breathing room. We had savings. We had options. We took the boys to the beach for a week. Their first real vacation. Watching Jalen and Theo play in the waves, their faces bright with joy and freedom. I felt no regret, only relief. Only certainty. Jalen signed up for baseball camp. Theo started swimming lessons. We went to movies and mini golf and did all the normal family things that had seemed like luxuries before. But more than the activities, more than the financial freedom, there was a shift in my boys. They stood taller, smiled more easily, stopped apologizing for taking up space. Because in our home, they weren't competing for scraps. They weren't waiting in corners. They were the priority, the center, the beloved. 3 months after I cut off the money, my mother called with a different tone. "I think we should talk," she said, not crying, not angry, Just tired. Okay, I said. Your father and I have been discussing things. The move has been hard, but it's also been clarifying. We've had to look at our choices, our spending, how we've been living. I waited, and we've had to look at how we've treated you, how we've treated your boys. My throat tightened. I don't know if I can make it right, she continued, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. But I'd like to try. If you'd let us. It wasn't a full apology. It didn't erase years of hurt and hierarchy, but it was a beginning. A crack in the wall. Jalen has a baseball game on Saturday, I said. 2 o'clock. You and Dad could come if you want. We'll be there. She said. They came. They sat in the stands. They cheered when Jalen got on base. They talked to Theo about his swimming. They tried. It wasn't perfect. Vanessa still barely spoke to me. The relationship with my parents was different now, more careful, with clear boundaries I enforced. But there was respect where there hadn't been before. There was acknowledgement. And most importantly, my sons knew something fundamental and true. They mattered. Their needs mattered. Their feelings mattered. They were not an afterthought or a second choice or a corner to stand in while others were served first. They were the priority, as they should have been all along. Looking back now, I can see that moment in the dining room as the gift it was. The undeniable clarity, the unavoidable truth, the catalyst that forced me to finally see what had been happening all along. My children didn't deserve crumbs. They deserved the whole feast, and it was my job to make sure they got it, even if it meant walking away from the table entirely.